And in 12 months, we've got 5 full-time equivalent doctors
Oh,
filling those
wow.
rooms full every single day. If you can't contribute to paying, we won't be here and you'll have no care.
Mm.
That
Yeah, I think this is very topical. Obviously, on social media, yeah, you get some of the comments like, oh, it's just, greedy doctors. But, the Medicare rebates have not kept up with, actual inflation or even healthcare inflation.
that's what medicine is. It's us suggesting things to the patient so they empower themselves
Mm.
and improve their own health. You're self-employed. And I don't think we promote that enough. And I don't think the junior hospital doctor can comprehend that, because a lot of older GPs can't sell their businesses, and or for whatever reason they sell the property and just shut the business. And that's happened a lot to us locally. um, that I went, I want to go to a bigger practice, and I want to go to a practice where they may have that conversation with me up front, going, in 3 years or 5 years, sure, you can buy in.
Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Passive Income Doctor. Today, we have a very special guest, Dr. Annalyse Crane, who is a GP and business owner in Sydney. Went from being a PE teacher prior to studying medicine and now has done very well in business and property. Welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. It's lovely to be here, and it's nice to have followed you on social media as well, and see that some of my uni and GP colleagues had sort of scoped you out for me. And I think we all need to work on the journey together, with the ultimate goal of at some point having some passive income, and not having to work till we're 75 plus, like is the case for my
Mm,
parents. And I think that's one of my goals, is you sort of see how hard your parents have worked, and for the next generation coming through. And I'd like to sort of be in a position to be able to help my kids, but at the same time teach them those work ethic values. And having a job is important, but also doing something that you really enjoy. And I'd have to say, 10 years ago, 15 years ago at uni, if you'd have said to me that I would be running a large business with a large turnover with a business partner, I would have went, no way. But it's amazing how much you pick up along the way, and how sometimes you need to take big risks to make big success, and being able to trust your instinct and have a good support team around you has been quite important for me.
definitely having a support network. And I think also, yeah, I think one of the reasons why I started this podcast is, yeah, I didn't see many kind of doctors kind of talking about, finances and investing, obviously very busy looking after, patients, looking after your own family. And yeah, often we want to, break the taboo and, talk about finances. So thanks for coming onto the show.
No worries.
So do you want to tell us a bit about yourself and, what you do day to day?
Absolutely. So, as we said before, I live in Sydney. I live in the Sutherland Shire in south of Sydney, and completed my university degree at Notre Dame in Sydney. So I was the first cohort through in a very new program, and had been working as a teacher in international schools and in Sydney for about 10 years before that. And I'd come home for Christmas one year, and someone had said, if you ever want to do something, you have to do it now. And that resonated with me, and I applied to do medicine the next day. And that, I suppose, fast forward that journey, you do your 4 years at uni, got married, had kids, and effectively from the time that I was an intern until I fellowed, I was either pregnant or having small kids at daycare. And it's nice to finally get a bit of my own time to be able to spend on my own hobbies, whether that's swimming, being involved with the surf club, skiing, and having activities that we can sort of do as a family, and similarly with my peers or colleagues and my husband. So I'm I'm just a normal GP, who serves her patient cohort and really values the work that I put into the patients. And I think that's how Beck and I ended up having this dynamic, rapidly growing, large group of businesses with an impressive property portfolio that hopefully gets us somewhere eventually. But of course, you sort of sit in that holding pattern for a period of time going, is this going to pay off, or am I going to be working forever?
Mm, definitely. And we can touch on that. Even myself, recently, yeah, property, yeah, it's not just all roses and positives. There is some, maintenance costs and land tax, et cetera, et cetera. Um, so how was it kind of, through, I think you said internship and junior doctor's years, how was that kind of juggling that and kind of, raising a family and, I can imagine it was quite difficult.
Well, we all know interns don't earn amazing money, and it also involves shift work. And you often want to pick up the extra Sunday shifts or the after-hours
Mm,
shifts to try and top up your pay packet. Add having a small baby, so I returned to work with a 9-week-old baby
wow.
on a transplant term at St Vincent's, and found it hard, but at the same time we were fortunate enough to live in a very small one-bedroom unit in Dulwich Hill, which was close enough to work for both of us. We had some support from both of our mums, and you really struggle. Like, as in, I used to drive a car to the hospital that cost $473, and my goal was to get a proper car when I had a baby because I needed to be able to put a car seat in it. And
Yes.
I think it's setting those small goals, but also respecting and living within your means at the time, going, it's
Mm,
okay to drive the dodgy, cheap car because it gets me from A to B. But as those, your goals change, as in a safe car for a kid, then you sort of have to take the leap and get another car.
yeah. Um, so let's backtrack. On this podcast, I've interviewed some of the other doctors, such as Dev Raga as well, another doctor
Mm.
podcaster, and a lot of our kind of philosophy about investing and finance is kind of shaped by our childhood or kind of growing up. What was your kind of money backstory, if any? Like, what were any discussions or kind of mindset about money growing up?
Uh, I think it was work hard and you'll be rewarded, but if you don't work hard, you're not going to have success and you're not going to be anything or become anything. And I mean that not, let's all be doctors and have that affluent lifestyle, but it's along the lines of if you work long, hard hours and pick up extra shifts and are smart with how you work, where you work, then you're able to sort of have holidays and be able to go out to dinner. And I think growing up, it was very much there was no money being flashed around. There was certainly nothing extravagant. I certainly didn't come from a wealthy family. Um, but I think on that sort of theme is my parents valued education, and it was okay if we can send you to this school where you'll have opportunities to learn and mix with other students who have similar growth mindsets, then you do well out of it. And I think when I say do well, it's be able to go to uni, be able to have a part-time job, be able to understand that if you can be organized and fit it all in, it eventually you'll flourish. And I suppose I one example there is when I was in year 7, my mum decided to retrain from a registered nurse to a midwife, and that was partly because she'd got separated, divorced, and wanted to change her career structure. And she actually failed her exams 3 times because she was trying to work full time, juggle, a kid in year 7, a kid in primary school, and wasn't super academic, just wasn't able to do exams well. But even now, that sort of 25 plus years later, or 30 plus years later, I can reflect on she didn't give up. She kept going. She studied at night. And I think that showed us that if you want to do something, you can do it. And I think that's also a bit of a business mantra for us as well. It's like we don't take no, and if you want to go out and conquer, you can. And I think there's anyone who's sort of come from that working class family and had to sort of prove themselves is a hard worker. In the same way as we had a bit of joke at work the other day that some of us, some of our registrars still have very large HECS debts, help debts, but some of them, their parents had said, look, if you do this, we'll assist you. And, we can joke about it as adults, but I think when you have to pay your own way, it certainly makes you accountable and responsible for the outcome.
Mm. And what was your first job? Was it like working at a pool in a shop? Is that right?
Yes, so I worked at Bexley Pool where I got $5 an hour, and I would work from 6 a.m. till 6 p.m.
Wow.
And I suppose my break was I could eat a few lollies and have a few chips along the way. And part of that role was hosing out the showers and serving the people coming in to, or, on the counter, and then selling lots and lots of lollies and drinks to young people. Back in the day, going to the public pool was the place to be in summer. People didn't have pools in their backyard. And it was a really busy place, but I was given a lot of trust and financial responsibility, and having to do simple maths in my head, like it's $1.50 to get in for kids and $3 for adults. I At the time, I just saw it as a way to build up money so that I could go shopping. But I think, now having a kid that's almost the same age, it's like, if you get a job, you can buy your own makeup or your own clothes. And interestingly enough, she really wants to have a job. So hopefully those values have been passed on.
Yeah, definitely. And I think later on, I think when you were 21 years old, you bought your first property. Is that correct?
Yes, so I had my first teaching position with the Department of Education, and my full-time permanent salary gross was $29,000 per year,
Wow.
which I suppose if you think now, teachers are a little bit better paid now. And I'd always banked with the Commonwealth Bank since I was a small kid and didn't know any better, so went to them and said, okay, how much money are you going to lend me? And I bought a red brick two-bedroom unit on a main road, and I basically needed somewhere to live. So I thought, well, I'm not going to pay someone else's mortgage. I might as well pay my own. And then it really wasn't until sort of that 10 plus years later that when we wanted to get married and we're like, okay, where are we going to live? Let's buy a house. That having that unit meant that we could both sell our individual units and then put that money together to be able to buy a block of land to build a house.
Mm.
And at times I had rented it out, and that was a disaster. There were bed bugs, and there were supposed to be one couple living in the house, and there were four, and that
Wow.
kind of journey. But I I I think good advice is, if you can get into the property market, get in. And if that means that you rent out one of the rooms, or if you go overseas for a period of time, or you go and do a fellowship somewhere, you can put tenants in it. But I think a lot of, even now, like, it's taken me that 20, 25 years to go, I actually need, what I do now is going to impact me when I retire.
Mm.
And a lot of young people still don't quite understand that. And I think women in general may not have a lot of superannuation for that reason. Like, they may have worked part-time, they may have
Mm.
studied longer, they may have had time off for children, that, when you're 47 and I compare my just normal industry super to my husband. My husband has 6 times more super than I do.
Wow.
Um, And one of those reasons is because I worked overseas and didn't get super.
Mm.
He's works for a large company where they were sort of encouraged to top it up and they pay a bit extra. So um, I think starting off young and taking a risk with something that mightn't be the perfect forever home can open doors for you.
Yeah. And I was just curious, when you bought that first property to live in, I don't know if you remember, but at the time, was it kind of like rent was cheaper or the mortgage payments were cheaper, or was it roughly the same or
Yeah, it was about the same. Um, I can't remember what the repayments were, but um, I certainly, if I rented out the other room, I was actually ahead.
mm,
Um, and and that was, back in the day when the interest rates were certainly higher than what they are now. I'm not talking, parent generation of
mm,
17%, but um, you could buy something and put that money into your own investment rather than have your dead rent
mm,
money.
yeah. And was there like were many of your friends or colleagues similar age at the time also buying to live in as well, or were you kind of one of the more kind of savvy, if you like?
Look, I would say in some respects, yes, but of course, some of my multicultural friends, they may have bought a unit in Lakemba, Belmore, more on the periphery suburbs, where they could afford something, and that again, that's paid off. It's like, don't go for the best house in the best street. Go
Mm,
for what you can afford and what may have some capital growth in the long run, which I think, particularly in Sydney, long term, you can't really go wrong.
yeah. And I think you bought it for about 240, $245,000. And then 10 years later, when kind of upgrading to a house, like I just wondered, had the unit doubled by then or?
It was about double. We certainly we didn't make a loss. It was well paid off, with the ability
Oh,
to,
yep.
recoup some stamp duty for the next property type thing. And I would say it was close to double, but wasn't doubled.
Yep. No worries. And that's right. And I think in some of our notes before coming online today, so after upgrading to the house, you've also done well, maybe timing or maybe choosing very well. I think you said the house might have tripled in about 12 years.
Yeah. So um, we built a brand new house in a
Oh,
brand
wow.
new estate in southern Sydney. So we were sort of in that first land release, and this is before sort of the McMansions of the West.
Mm,
Um, and we looked for a house, a newish type house, for over 12 months. We'd also looked at, a renovator's delight and married full type way, and we'd sort of I reckon we'd inspected over 100 houses. And it's
wow.
like, right, okay, our price point is about, let's say, between 800 and 1.2 max.
Yeah.
And you go to an auction and you miss out by 20,000. And then my father in law um, said, why don't you go and look at this land? I reckon it'll be good. And we're like, oh, we're not building a house. It's too much hard work. Um, but it was amazing. I would build a house again. We agreed on our decisions and we chose a smaller building company rather than just
Ah,
your, kit home type place.
yep.
There's certainly a few problems. We did go to fair trading to get the finished product, but we bought a house 12 years ago, finished product, everything, land, gardens, for 1.2 million, and there's houses in my street now selling for over 4.2. And I think the other um, big gamble that I've recently made is I actually bought the house next door.
Wow.
So you sit there and go, that was never really in my intention. I don't know why I did that, and part of that was planning. Going, I have aging parents. Where are they going to go? To go into a nursing home is about a $1.5 million buy-in.
Wow.
So to put two mums, an aunt, and a dad, in whatever combination that may be, two or three of them in there, and to have full-time home care, you're actually ahead. And of course, I buy the house and my parents are like, I'm not living next to you. I don't want to live with you. And it's like, let's have that conversation when you're 85. But I, where I live has exploded. And part of that is it's close to the beach, reasonable sized blocks of land, well built houses that, aren't falling down and having to get roofs replaced and things
Mm,
like that. But also exponential population growth as well. So a lot of families from the eastern suburbs are moving south because they're in tiny houses where their kids have no yards.
mm,
Um, and I I suppose when you get married and you're 30, you don't actually think about what are you going to do when you're at the back end of your career.
mm,
We always thought we'd move again, and we looked at it, and someone said, "Look, the stamp duty is going to be this much,
mm.
and if you're going to upgrade, you've really got to be able to get the value out of it." And of course, everyone goes, "Wow, your house tripled in value," but we can't go and buy anything else
Mm.
because everything's either more expensive or you sit at that same level.
Yeah, stamp
So
duty is a huge, huge cost. Yeah.
look, we've been burnt. One of our business properties, we actually had to repay the stamp duty. We had to pay it twice.
Oh, wow.
And that was because we sort of changed the entity and the ownership
Mm,
structure, and it meant it was a expensive decision, but one that our accountant recommended. And it's like tax; it's very annoying, but it's not optional.
mm,
Um, but I think for some people who are looking at whether it's upgrading or flipping a house, you really got to look at stamp duty because it's effectively dead money as well. Friends who live three doors down from us, they have bought and sold three houses in 3 years,
wow.
where they've paid over $500,000 in stamp
Wow.
duty. So you think you're flipping a house and making a lot of money, but when you're actually paying lots of stamp duty, that yield is much lower.
Mm, yeah. And also, I think, maybe for some of our younger listeners or, yeah, kind of doctors early in their career, I think it's very important, kind of when choosing a partner, also one that shares similar financial values. What have you found in terms of, kind of relationships and finances?
I think, anyone who's in a relationship would say, nothing's always perfect. But I think the one core foundation of our marriage is we're very similar financially. So, for example, we're settling on a property in a month on the 12th of September. And this morning I said, you're not allowed to spend any money. There's no McDonald's, there's no coffees out. You're buying nothing. And he's like, why? And I said, we've just got no spare cash at the moment. And so when you explain the situation, going, we've got to pay stamp duty, we've got to pay legal fees. And, it's not being silly about your money. It's like, look, if he really wants to have a burger on the way home, I'm certainly not stopping him. But we are aligned in the way that we spend and save. And you don't know that when you first start going out with someone. But I think if it's a bit of a deal breaker if one of you's got lots of credit card debt and one of you goes shopping and buys whatever they want and doesn't quite think about it, but the other one is very frugal and tight. You're just not going to get along.
Mm,
In the same way as, yes, of course, we'll go out to dinner, but we're not eating out 3 and 4 times a week. We're more than happy to enjoy a home cooked meal. We certainly are lucky that we have access to cheap airfares because my husband works at Qantas, and so it's the pros and cons. It's like, okay, we get cheap flights, but we fly standby, so we certainly travel more than your average family. But you have to accept you're going at the last minute. You
mm.
might be getting turfed off in Singapore and not getting home for 3 days.
Oh, wow.
Um, and and that means that we have that opportunity, but that opportunity comes with a different amount of risk and anxiety, basically.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think overall, I'm lucky that I trust what he does with money. We're transparent. We share accounts. Interestingly, we have separate shares, partly because we had those accounts before we were together. So, as in, I don't see his shares, he can't see mine, but that's okay because there's not really anything to hide, and it's really just for fun and play money.
Yep. All right. Let's go. So obviously you were a PE teacher. What made you choose medicine?
I could sit here and say it's because I want to help people, and I think realistically, I became a doctor because I had a passion for learning and seeking knowledge and wanting to be a part of a person's journey, which is similar to teaching. You know, you play a role in people's lives and you develop relationships with people. So um, I never intended on being a GP, but I always knew that I wanted to make improvements in people's health and well-being. And in some ways, it was having that, friends who said, it's okay, you can do it. You're able to be a doctor. Um, and then I suppose, the stars aligning and you're passing interviews and you're passing tests. But I think deep down, it's if you want to do something and you've got to set the goal and go out and do it. And we are a teaching practice with many registrars, and it's like they're preparing for their CCE now, and they're like, oh, it's really hard, I'm going home to study. It's like, but you'll pass. You do the work, and we support you, and you have allocated teaching. And why don't you study with this person, why don't you study with that person? And all of those goals are achievable if the right people can sit there and go, have you thought about this, have you tried this? And I think in many ways that's what medicine is. It's us suggesting things to the patient so they empower themselves
Mm,
and improve their own health. Um, it's not about us being autocratic and going, you will be taking your cholesterol tablet because I said so. That's very much a thing of the past. But I think the highlight for me being a doctor is about the relationships. And ironically, I actually see quite a few people that I've taught. So I was their teacher, or I knew them from sort of the school environment or sports coaching environment. And that relationship goes in another direction. Um, and I hope that I make an impact on some people's lives. And I think, the good example there is when general practice is birth to grave.
mm,
So you're involved in pregnancy journeys and loss, and you're involved in palliative care and everything in between.
yeah. And that was leading on to the next question about why general practice. I guess, there's the continuity of care, relationships, communication. What made you kind of choose general practice? Did you consider anything else as well? And how you find general practice kind of over the years?
So if you'd have asked me as an intern resident what I wanted to be, is I wanted to be a vascular surgeon. And so I had an excellent role model, and I spent a lot of time in theatre, and I really enjoyed it. I also liked working in emergency, but the having a baby as an intern and having a shift working husband also meant that I really needed to make a career choice where I was available at night, or there was a start and a finish to what I was doing. And in some cases you can't, surgery doesn't quite have that unless you fellowed right at the end of your training. um, I can remember these GP representatives came to promote general practice and do some teaching, and they were all like, oh, and you can work part-time, and you can pick your kids up from school. And at the time I'm like, I don't want to do that. I want a real job where I work hard and I'm valued. And interestingly, the way that sort of goes full circle, and I'm like, okay, Mondays I pick up my kids from school. um, I've got opportunities to do education and podcasts and things like that. Whereas I probably didn't understand as a registrar, but when you're a GP, you are your own boss. you can do whatever you want. You are an independent contractor. You walk in, you walk out, you go, I don't feel like going to work today. I might say I'm not coming. And that's okay, because you are responsible. Yes, you have a obligation to provide care to your patients, but you're self-employed. And I don't think we promote that enough. And I don't think the junior hospital doctor can comprehend that when they're in the thick of that
Mm.
hospital phase. In the same way as I can have as many holidays as I want. And I tried having a salaried corporate position,
Mm.
and it didn't work, because they're like, no, you can't have annual leave now. And I'm like, why? I want to go away. And so I think general practice provides an incredible amount of flexibility, but even, I suppose, the way to scale the way that you work and earn money. Our practice is now open 7 days a week. So for me, Saturdays don't really work, because I have 3 kids that play sport on a Saturday, but Sunday in winter, I've got nothing to do. So I can go to work for 3 hours and earn the same money, if not more, than I would in a longer session during the week.
Mm.
For some people, working evening shifts, particularly in like an urgent care type environment, um, or working hospital extra shifts, may generate more money for you at the time. But I think you've got to look at what's the long-term sustainable plan. And deep down, I know that for me is 2 long full-time days in general practice, with a short day plus or minus a Saturday, a few hours on a Friday, Saturday, or Sunday. And that's the sweet spot for me and my family, and also for the amount of money that I need,
Mm.
without burning out, without spending hours and hours looking at results, and I suppose to protect myself medico-legally and what
Mm.
my tired, burnt out, cranky, getting HCCC reports because I'm, being mean to people. You've got to know where your burnout point is.
Mm.
And I think general practice allows that for you to identify and manage it.
Yeah, I think that's a great tip about kind of reflecting on yourself and, seeing, what are the triggers and, oh, these are some symptoms of burnout and, what are things you can put into place proactively to, prevent that. I think that's really great tips.
Look, I could talk
Yeah,
about burnout all day long, but that's a whole new podcast.
yeah. Um, and I guess, general practice does allow kind of, breadth, and obviously it's challenging at times, but I think also rewarding at times. I guess, it's kind of topical in the forums, and also, um, I think some of the GP or medico related websites talking about, GPs kind of moving towards, say, GPs with special interests, or kind of trends of GPs working part time. I know I've talked to some the older school GPs who said, "Oh, I used to work, maybe 12 hours a day and be on call 24/7." But I think the trend of that is kind of that's becoming less and less, and less of, in the past there were a lot of solo GPs, but now that's
Yes.
becoming less. What are your thoughts about trends of general practice and where it might be in the future?
I So I work in a large group practice where we've got 25 contracting GPs across 2/3 sites. And it's the reason I went to that practice was because I was in a smaller practice where, again, I couldn't have the leave that I wanted. I was always being asked to work extra shifts. And when you're at the bottom of the food chain, you either feel obliged to say yes, or you need to, and you do. And so in our practice, no one works more than 4 days a week. Most, especially if they've got small children, or they have caring for their parents, they may work 1, 2, 3 shifts. But every single GP that works at our practice has a special interest, and that often is a job that's not on site doing normal mainstream general practice. One of our doctors is involved with one of the football teams. My niche is aviation medicine. We have doctors who do skin. We have doctors who do a lot of complex women's health and gender care. And similarly, it's looking at, do you want to be on a board? Do you want to be on a special committee? Do you want to provide supervision and education? We promote those things. We go, here's an opportunity. Do you want to do it? You don't have to do it. But again, it's burnout prevention, it's diversifying your income and interests and looking at a sustainable long-term career. And I think 18 months ago, I had what I thought was my dream job. I was an airline doctor, and that's what I had strived to be, but it just didn't work. The travel didn't suit me. The being on call didn't suit me. I realized that I work better in a group general practice environment where I can go, look, I'm going to the snow for a week. Can someone check my results? Or that you can sort of see who you want to see when you want to see them. We have another doctor who only provides GP lactation services and cares for babies and pregnant women. And that's a massive gamble. She went from mainstream general practice to, I want to do something special and different, and she's thriving at it. She's got an excellent local reputation, but it's hard because you're always chasing new patients.
Mm.
And so I think a tip for if you're taking you're going into a new practice, you're fellowing, don't go in and take over someone who's about to retire. You don't want to inherit bad habits and bad mistakes.
Mm.
You don't want to inherit a culture that doesn't fit you. You want to set yourself up and create the kind of work environment that you want. And that's hard at times. Like, as in, we went from mixed billing to private billing, and we lost people, but they came back because they realized the quality of care was different. They got value for their dollar. They got care and follow-up and expertise that, I'm not saying that doesn't occur in all forms of billing, but we offered a premium service to a premium cohort, and that's worked for us. But you sort of we have our local Shire GP committee, and 3/4 of those doctors are retired or semi-retired, very established in their careers. And one of the doctors who I respect very greatly, is an excellent mentor, said, back in the day, my wife took the 4 kids on holidays by herself because I couldn't leave the practice.
Oh.
My wife cooked every night. My wife cared for the kids. And I actually stopped him and I said, so I do everything that your wife does, and I work like you do. So he couldn't conceptualize it. And I think for younger doctors who would like to have a family, you've got to look at how you do that juggle. And I think our practice does that really well, because our key philosophy is your family comes first. And if your family is your priority and comes first, everything else will work around that. We've got the man, if you call in sick tomorrow, there are enough staff to make up for that. Or you see them 2 days later, it's okay. It's not life and death. I think having workforce capacity and a workforce culture that wants you as an independent contractor to thrive is really important.
Yeah, I think that's really great. In any organization or any kind of business, having a great culture, is very important. A place where, staff feel valued, and, also then, I would say flows on to patient care as well.
Yep.
Well, tell us briefly then about your interest in aviation medicine, like kind of what got you into it, and how do you find it?
So about 10 years ago, my dad, who is a pilot, said, you should do this course. You get paid well and you just tick a few boxes. And, it was his way of getting me to be a pilot when I didn't want to be a pilot. And so I was waitlisted on the course for a period of time. At the time, you had to go to Monash and do it in Melbourne.
Mm.
And I did the course, and I started to see a few pilots. I was fortunate that I sort of had I was near a local small airport, Bankstown, so I was able to generate a few pilots to see, and over time built up that base. And I took it on because I thought it was wellness medicine. Pilots and air traffic controllers have a motivation to stay well and fit and healthy. But then in the first 3 months that I was at DAMI, I had two pilots have cardiac arrests,
Oh,
and
wow.
both survived, both had successful resusces and survived. And I went, well, this is actually really hard. And there's a lot of responsibility, and there's a lot of assessment and attention to detail. But I think overall, what I like about it is pilots and doctors are really similar. We make mistakes, people die. We need to be at our best and be fit and healthy when we front up to work. And so you can have a great rapport with the pilots, but they also turn up to their annual medical. They've all got white coat hypertension the first 3 times you check their blood pressure, because if they fail, they can't work.
Mm.
And I think um, over the 10 years, I've been able to sort of get them to trust me and go, right, okay, I'm getting divorced. I think I'm feeling a bit depressed. I think I'm drinking more than I should be. Okay, well, why don't you go and see a psychologist? Why don't you take some medication? And so, of course, there's a lot of GP skills, but there's also a lot of occupational medicine, drug and alcohol skills that go into that. And being able to marry it all together with the ultimate goal and the function of my assessment is, are you fit to fly? Are you safe to have, can you have 400 passengers sit behind you and you safely do your job? There's not a lot of other occupations where that risk assessment is that important. In the same way as where I live, there happens to be a lot of air traffic controllers because, we're 20 minutes from the airport. If you work for air services, you have unlimited sick leave. If you get sick, or you're depressed, or you have a substance problem, they can put you into a non-operational role and provide peer support and mentoring and say, go and get some help, and then when you're improving and better, we'll have CASA reassess you. So I love it, and I see a lot of pilots, and I'm busy, and it's a reasonably good income earner, but it also comes with a lot of risk.
Mm.
And there's a lot of behind the scenes work that, you think the pilot comes in and out in 35 minutes. There's often chasing stuff and asking questions and being available by email, which is not normal general practice.
Mm.
But overall, I found having that extra rapport and relationship is rarely taken advantage of.
Mm.
But I love it, I think, because I also understand it. I grew up in a household with a pilot, and I anyone who wants to be involved in aviation medicine, you don't do it to make lots of money. You do it because you enjoy it, and it's a part of that aviation culture,
Mm. And when
and
you
it's
did
fun.
that airline office job, was that kind of like kind of high up, kind of like a chief medical officer, or kind of like had to be on call for certain things? Is that like,
So there was somebody who sat above me,
yeah,
and she had the ultimate responsibility of the whole airline. And then, of course, there's a team of us that involved a nurse and a psychologist
mm,
and a registrar and me. But yeah, like two days a week, I was on call for 24/7.
wow,
And that would be, pilots or ground staff or cabin crew calling up and saying, I've got COVID. Can I take Panadine Fort and still go to work tomorrow? And you're like, oh,
wow,
hang on. Firstly, you've got COVID. And secondly, we need to talk about the medications and your fitness to work. And but the spectrum of aviation medicine goes from anything to, you can have an earthquake in Vanuatu and you've got people on the ground. How do you get them home
mm,
safely? How do you provide debriefing and counselling to your workforce? One of the other things that I was involved in is looking at how perimenopause and menopause affects ground crew, cabin crew, pilots, because it's very under researched. In Sydney alone, more than 50% of the women who say do check-in in that type of role, a guest services role, were perimenopausal. And so how do you provide flexibility with uniforms and work and brain fog, etc.? So a lot of great research opportunities, a lot of infectious disease management. It wasn't all just, is the pilot fit to fly?
Mm.
It was very different and corporate, and I loved it, but it just didn't gel with also running my own business.
Yeah, definitely. Well, this brings us to, GP practice. I think, some of my colleagues have expressed interest or have started a general practice, but I think, maybe there was a survey and, only a small percentage of new fellow GPs are kind of thinking or contemplating practice ownership. For yourself, what made you want to be a GP practice owner, and how have you found the journey in growing it?
I think I always dreamt of creating and owning a practice. And that would be, that pipe dream of there'd be a coffee machine and a yoga space, and people would come and do other things. And I was a registrar in a smaller practice where I'd had discussions saying, so what's your succession plan? What are you going to do when you retire? Would you be interested in selling me the business? And those discussions never progressed. They kept being stalled. And I went away for a long weekend. And I sort of had this moment of anxiety going, I don't want to be unemployed at 50. I don't want to invest 10, 15 years into a patient cohort, and then the business shuts because a lot of older GPs can't sell their businesses, and or for whatever reason they sell the property and just shut the business. And that's happened a lot to us locally. um, that I went, I want to go to a bigger practice, and I want to go to a practice where they may have that conversation with me up front going, in 3 years or 5 years, sure, you can buy in. And I didn't know what that looked like. I didn't understand that. And I think for anyone who's contemplating ownership, you have to be prepared to own the building, because ultimately that's where you're going to make your money. In having the hardware for sort of 10 or 20 years, where you might be lucky and you can get cheap rent, particularly if you're sort of in a regional area.
Mm.
But if you want a big space, a custom space, you need to be in a position to own what you work out of, because you're always going to be at the mercy of the landlord. If they jack the rent up and you can't afford it, what do you do with 25 doctors and 4,000 patients?
Mm.
You've got to go somewhere else, and that's disruptive. So I happened to sit on the college council with my business partner. We were colleagues, friends at the time, and it was, of course you can come and work here. Just come 1 day a week, see if you like it. Make a decision to try before you buy. And for whatever reason, I went, nah, I'll resign, I'll move, and off I go. And fortunately, and I probably didn't have the insight to see this, is both of the current owners retired within a short space of time from when I joined.
Mm.
So one left and the current partner bought in. But we knew the other one eventually would leave because the building was in their super. So we knew that when they retired, they'd want to eventually sell the building, eventually sell the business. And so we came on where we rented off them. And it was I'm not going to say it was a disaster, but it was complicated.
Mm.
And then, with no warning, with no discussion, however, we knew from our rental contract we had the first right of purchase on the building.
Mm.
We literally came to work on a Monday morning and there's a large auction sign out the front of the building.
Yeah.
And so having that moment of going, where am I going to get that much money from? Who is going to lend me this money? How am I possibly going to do this? When you actually break it down and go, we have subleases, we have a pathology lease, we earn XYZ per tenant doctor, it's achievable. And you have to quickly go from, you have to be able to do a lot of maths in your head and have advice from lawyers and accountants and people that aren't making emotional decisions. But I think we also have started two practices from scratch, and it's incredibly stressful because you go, what happens if no one turns up?
Mm.
But sort of doing that market analysis and looking at what's your demographic. And for us, in our current practice at Kirrawee, we identified that the majority of our patients were coming from the next postcode down.
Mm.
They were traveling 15 minutes in the car to come to us because they couldn't get an appointment anywhere else under 2 weeks, 4 weeks. So we went, well, there's patients there. Let's open a business. And in 12 months, we've got 5 full-time equivalent doctors
Oh,
filling those
wow.
rooms full every single day. So looking at what your market is. So if you're, again, back to that, don't buy a practice that the patients aren't happy, you're not happy, it's falling down around you. Where if you buy into that practice, you know, your nurses and your practice managers are going to retire, because that concept of buying goodwill, I think, is becoming archaic.
Mm.
You want to buy something where you're happy to do the majority of the work. And you know, some of the other sort of doctor groups that I'm in, it's like, I would never work for a GP in a GP practice that wasn't GP owned, because a GP understands it, and the GP has the GP's interests and the patient's interests at heart. But you know, we're also a bit of a dying breed. Owning a practice is a lot of work, and it's a lot of after hours, and it's a lot of learning how to do jobs. Like, if you'd have told me that I knew how to use the Xero accounting software to do anything, I would have went, oh, I'm not doing that. I don't want to do that. But you've sort of got to have eyes over all aspects of the business. You don't have to run everything. You need good teams to do that and outsource what you can. But we, as practice owners, have made lots of mistakes, and they have been hard and expensive mistakes at times. And that's we've had some negative experiences with our IT providers. We've had some negative experiences with our pathology providers. We've also had doctors that are not the right fit for us, and being able to sit there and go, this isn't working. We don't want to keep you just for the sake of a bum on a seat. We want you to be the right cultural fit for our business in the way that we bill and care and are reliable. And that means that we say no to doctors who ask for jobs often.
Yeah. And with starting practice, I know some people start, you know, in your case, you know, kind of starting from scratch, while I know some of the people say, oh, taking over existing practice because that way, you know, there will be patients. Like, did you explore kind of purchasing an existing business, or did you think, look, let's, take the risk and start from scratch?
We went and had conversations with 2, 3, 4 existing practices, and you know, all the doctors were retiring. They wanted to sell the business and the buildings, and it just wasn't the right vibe. It wasn't what we wanted. Interestingly, so one of those practices actually closed completely, and some of those patients came over to us, but they weren't the right demographic fit. Like, I suppose they weren't trained as patients in the same way that we practiced medicine. It's like, okay, I'm on 3 benzos and 4 opiates,
mm,
and I come
mm,
every week, and that's what I want. And we're like, hang on a minute, that's not how we do things. In the same way as another local, two women who were in practice, closed, and we inherited a lot of those patients. They went to the new practice. It was just serendipitous timing,
mm,
but they were the right fit.
mm,
So although that doctor's 20 years older than us, she practiced in a very similar way to us. And she could say, I'm going to send you to this doctor because I think she will be the right fit and look after you.
mm.
And she actually hand selected. She went, okay, you go here, you go here, you go here.
Wow.
And that provided excellent handover of care. Interestingly, that retired GP now attends our practice as a patient.
Mm, mm.
So, that to me, that's the ultimate trust,
Yes.
that you hand your patient's cohort over to a team of doctors, but you also hand your own care over to them.
Mm,
And I think I can already see other little traps forming in our local area, that there are practices that have been very big and successful, but they have no succession plan.
mm,
Their cohort of doctors are aging, and they're not replacing them sufficiently with young or younger doctors who will take over and be molded to that practice avatar and practice culture. And you sit there and go, how come I can see this and you can't? And so I think, one of our success strategies is we evolve rapidly, we make rapid decisions, and we both run like that and agree to do like that. But it means we've had to have staff that come with us with that rapid rate of change. And so, we've lost some, we've gained some.
mm. And I guess if you're happy to share, let's talk about some of the challenges. I think uh you said maybe performance reviews for staff that not work out, and then I think another one was, I guess running a sustainable business, having to cut the cut the percentage
Yes.
paid to the doctors by 5% of billings and things like that.
Yep. So if I said about 2 years ago, we sort of pitched to our doctors. So when we went from mixed billing, where we were bulk billing children and aged
Mm,
pensioners,
mm.
and at least 50%,
Yes.
to 100% private billing. Every single patient that walked in the door would be billed, with the exception of Gold DVA.
Mm,
We did the maths and said, right, okay, we see a lot of children here. So in a lot of the doctors' case, they were halving their incomes by seeing all these children.
mm,
Kids come 2-3 times a week, whatever. We we did the maths and pitched it to them and said, we're actually going to go broke, and we won't be able to pay you, and we won't be able to pay, have good internet booking services and infrastructure that benefits you, stuff to do skin excisions,
mm,
fancy tools.
mm,
If we don't do something about generating more service income for the business. And we said, okay, so if we go to 100% private billing, you will double your money effectively, and we will take an extra 5%. But in that 5%, we will provide, online bookings, blah, blah, blah. And two doctors were hesitant. They're like, I don't want to take a pay cut. I don't think this will work. This won't suit my patient cohort.
mm,
And eventually they left. It wasn't the right fit for them. But there were 2 or 3 of those, I suppose, pioneer doctors that were like, we trust you. We know that you run a good business, and you're doing this to help us thrive. They turned around and went, oh, we were nervous. We've got mortgages to pay. We didn't want to get less money.
mm,
And we had a brief period of people going, oh, I don't want to pay. But in the end, we see about 500 new patients a month.
Mm,
So they, the patients understood what the dollar value was, what they were getting for their money. And over time, the doctors also realized their take home pay was better. And the reason we did it, yes, we we're probably in line with what most other practices in the area do, and a few of the other practices then tried to sort of replicate what we did. But again, we had to set it up, we had to have do the maths, have the conversation, explain what they were getting to make it work. But that hasn't necessarily worked for other practices across Sydney.
mm,
And people sit there and go, okay, well, I want this percentage, and it's like everyone in our practice is on the same percentage. There's no discrepancy. All fellows are on the same, and I think that also helps people feel valued, that they're not being played one against the other.
mm.
Um, and people have tried to negotiate different service fees. Say perhaps if they were going to do nursing home work, they're like, well, I'm doing all the work. I'm not using, say, a BP site license. I'm not using a room. I'm not taking up a room. And it's like, well, we still need to do billing and have a admin person, and yeah, you still need a BP license. But when you can explain to your contractors, right, this is what you get for your service fee, they then go, oh, yeah, that's better than the place where no one talks to me, and they don't have a nice coffee machine and good biscuits. It's those little things that make worth coming to work
Mm,
worth it.
mm. Yeah, so it sounds like obviously one of the challenges is getting doctors on board. Obviously, I interviewed another doctor on the show who's in Brisbane, Suresh, and obviously one of the fears is when switching to private billing, suddenly there might be a big drop in patient numbers and
Mm.
go very quiet. But I guess in your practice case, that wasn't the case. And then I guess on the second step would be once you've convinced the contracted doctors, we have to kind of convince the patients as well. Did you find kind of both equally challenging?
We did a lot of advertising. It was very clear. There were, posters in the rooms. There were signs at the desk. There was an email and a text message that went out to everyone. There was social media, so that or when you book on our booking platform, it's like, you will be charged this much. This is a private billing practice. So there was a few people that are like, I'm not paying, and it's like, that's fine. But when you come here, you pay. So if you don't want to pay, you don't come here. And yes, we did lose the odd patient. Um, but most of them over time came back.
Mm,
And some of that was because they couldn't get the care that they wanted at the place down the road. Um, and I think, this may not work in a very low socioeconomic region,
mm,
and how that care gets provided. Of course, we have some flexibility. There's legacy patients that I bulk bill,
mm,
but the doctor ultimately has the choice to do what they want. But overall, the patients and the community understand the expectation. And we market it as, when you go and have a haircut, it's not free.
mm,
When you go to the physio, it's not free.
mm,
So why are we free? And very clearly saying, the Medicare rebate doesn't sustain this business. Our rent is this much, our electricity is this much. We can't actually run a business. So if you can't contribute to paying, we won't be here, and you'll have no care.
mm. Yeah,
That
I think this is very topical. Obviously, on social media, yeah, you get some of the comments like, "Oh, it's just, greedy doctors." But, the Medicare rebates have not kept up with, actual inflation or even healthcare inflation, which runs
mm,
at higher than CPI, like, yeah, rent, consumables. electricity, IT. Yeah.
Absolutely. And I think, we did a lot of education about, this is what you go to the doctors, this is what you get, and this is what um the doctor takes home by the time we pay rent, etc., etc.
Yeah. And I think you also mentioned some, upskill in practice management, such as, using companies or coaches such as Project X. Disclaimer, I'm not sponsored by them, but you can reach out to me. Um, what did you learn from kind of that journey or yeah, kind of continual education?
I think I really enjoyed working with Sachin and Todd, and Sachin and I are actually, I think, very philosophically aligned. You have those shared stories and those shared sort of business journeys. Um, and we went into Project X with a distinct set of problems that needed answers. One of those involved a Fair Work Tribunal. One of those involved an IT infrastructure issue. The biggest thing that we did with them was we switched from medical director to best practice.
Mm, mm,
So, I suppose a GP support service like that, and there are other ones out there. You've got to go in with a problem and navigate the solution. For a lot of people involved, their main issue was recruitment, and it's like, okay, how do you make it appealing? How do you solve the problem? And we learned we learned how to teach ourselves how to fix the problems with the right mentors and the people going, what about this? What about this? And but we also probably reached a ceiling of where our learning where
mm.
we could teach ourselves. It's like
Yeah.
we graduated.
Yeah.
And that's amazing, and I'm really proud that that was where we got, that we could sort of, now we have problems, we can go, right, we're going to outsource the solution here. And we've got contacts and we've got confidence and we've got the right admin managers, operation managers, lead nurses, and it was planting the seeds to say, what's the problem? How do you get to the solution? And now we're in a position to teach that next generation of GP within our practice. And, they classically say, she just wasn't my avatar. She's not the right fit for the practice. And so it's learning the lingo and learning those little tiny business tools, because as I've said already, GPs as an independent contractor, you are a business. Your image and your service is a business. If you don't do your job properly, no one comes back. And I think that was a really impressive journey for us. But at the same time, we navigated, one of our practice managers moved interstate,
Mm,
and being a part of that project gave her the confidence to make changes to her life and put herself first. And she would never have had that opportunity if we hadn't have dragged her along to different workshops.
mm.
And that's, that the project pays for itself, basically.
Yeah. Yeah. Sounds like had a very good learnings and very good outcome. So, kind of finishing up, let's talk about, investing as a doctor, for yourself, you know, do you kind of have one asset class of choice, whether it be properties or shares or ETFs, or I guess, reinvesting money in a business? Although it is interesting, kind of hearing some business owners kind of, some people kind of maybe at certain stages might get the highest return investing in their own business, but then other people say it's also important to have kind of assets outside of the business as a, maybe diversification or, things like that. What have um, your journey been in terms of, yeah, investment?
I I think I'm in the diversify your investment category, but over time, I tend to shift where my priority is. I have some shares. I don't have a lot of shares. I'm certainly not going to retire on my
Mm,
shares. And you look at them and go. So, for example, I bought Sonic Healthcare shares during COVID,
mm.
and they still haven't recovered.
Oh,
But Sonic's a big company. It's innovative. It's well staffed. It should do well eventually. I in some ways unintentionally own a lot of property.
mm,
And that's, I haven't had a mortgage on my own house. Like, we paid off our house in less than 10 years.
wow. Yeah.
And that's because we prioritized that, because I hate interest and I hate owing money. And I'm very much a pay everything now type person. But with the business properties, that's harder, because you've got to have some cash flow and you can't just keep topping it up.
Mm,
You've got to sort of prepare for the rainy day
mm,
of, I don't know, something breaks and you need to replace it.
mm,
And that mentality for the business assets is that chip away, and long term the property should go up in value, or someone else will come in and buy them. But we also have them set up in different structures. So some things are in self-managed super fund. Some things are in a unit trust. Some things are, husband and wife name. And so I think another important message is doctors in general have to look at asset protection. And it's, again, something that's not taught. Most of us will still have our principal home, but you don't want to go and have millions and millions of dollars worth of stuff that if you get sued, you're going to lose. And I think having good advice about that is also important, in saying that you don't work with the intention of being sued, but you still have to be smart around how you do that. I hope that by the time I retire, I can still go on holidays, and I could perhaps work part-time and do more volunteer work, exercise more. And, they're my goals to be. And, I see a lot of my friends who are in their late 60s and 70s, and they're like, okay, Monday we go to the gym, Tuesday we play golf, Wednesday we go bike riding. That's actually my goal,
mm,
to be able to have a relaxed lifestyle where I'm not having to work to survive.
mm,
And whereas my mum broke a tooth the other day and had to go and work a shift so that she
mm,
could pay to go to the dentist. I'm like, Mum, I'll give you the money for the dentist. But I think most doctors are in very fortunate positions that we earn good money, but you still need to safely look after that money. And yes, we always, the greedy doctor mentality, but like, I don't know about you, I paid my APRA registration last night. What am I getting for my $908? Not much. My indemnity insurance,
mm,
hideously expensive. And people they don't know that. They don't know how much insurance we pay just to turn up to work. So I
mm,
think there's a lot of hidden costs that, of course, you can't save and prepare for everything. At times, I've had money in fixed deposits and where I could, get the interest.
mm,
But of course, for most people, if you've got a mortgage, then that's not how you roll.
mm,
But I certainly don't put all my eggs in one basket. And when the time comes, how you sell, do you sell the whole business? Do you sell a portion of the business? Do you sell your house, downsize your house, for example, like, as in, hopefully our children will move out one day, we could move to a small unit. You also don't know what's around the corner. So if you become unwell, or someone in your family does, most doctors can't lose their income and not work for 6 to 12
Mm,
months.
mm,
Most of us don't have 6 to 12 month buffer sitting
mm.
there ready to meet our financial responsibilities. So that's something I'm anxious about.
Yeah.
But you cross that bridge when you come to it, and you sort of, again, my business partner is insured very well in different, everything's covered, whereas well, she'll be right. I've got enough insurance, but not as much,
Mm.
uh,
Yeah,
and different.
yeah, and that's a good reminder, in terms of, obviously if, if you don't turn up to work, don't get paid. So then, it's good for doctors to have the foresight, set aside some of your, earned or active income, and then that way into assets that can later on pay a passive income. And also, yeah, income protection. I think for listeners, you can check out episode I did with a financial planner on that. Having the appropriate insurances in place that protect you in case you can't go to work is very important. Um, so all I want to touch on is you said kind of unintentional in terms of property. Was that kind of in terms of in terms of your business and of wanting more control over that, so therefore kind of maybe combining with business partners to kind of buy out the property so that not subject to huge rent increases? Was that kind of
Yes,
what you meant by that?
yes. So when we owned the business and we didn't own the building, the building owners could charge whatever rent they wanted. They
Mm.
could increase that rent every year. They also had control of the subleases. We didn't.
Oh.
So because the sublease was off the main building ownership. And when we saw the opportunity to control the rent and control the long term, the longevity of the practice,
Mm.
it was an opportunity we couldn't not take. And part of it was, let's say we didn't buy that building, someone else bought it or it got
Mm.
sold to a developer, whatever.
Mm.
We had 40 staff that wouldn't have jobs.
Mm.
And so perhaps haphazardly, we actually went and bought another building, like a backup building.
Mm.
So that became the second practice.
Mm.
But the intention of buying that building was in case we didn't get the main building,
Yeah.
we needed to put people somewhere.
Yeah.
And it was currently like a chiropractor, allied health type.
Yes.
So we were getting some rent for that at the time.
Yeah.
But suddenly the tenants of that building moved out, and
Mm.
we're like, okay, we'll sell it. We couldn't sell it and get the money back because we bought it in the peak of the market.
Yes.
Like, so what are we going to do? We'll have to open another practice. And we actually did that turnaround.
Oh, 6 weeks.
Our practice manager still talks to us. But it was massive. And
Yeah.
that was paint a building, fitted out new floors, new
Yes.
everything, put up walls.
Yeah.
But again, because we own the building, we had the control over what we could do.
Yeah.
And we could go, okay, we've got this 5-doctor building. Would the local pathology company like to rent out some space? And therefore that assists and contributes to your mortgage repayments.
Mm.
And that's not easy. And it's also a very contentious topic. But I know of a practice in Sydney where the pathology rent pays the entire rent for the building. It covers
Wow.
the rent for the building. We are certainly not in that category, but and I think the other big lesson about building and practice ownership is a tenant doctor will always make more money than an allied health person.
Mm.
So, if the physio or the psychologist wants to rent a room, they're never going to make the business the same money that a full-time GP who works, 8 till 5 in that room is going to make with their service fee, because the allied income is not matched the private billing GP.
Mm.
So our philosophy is fill the room with doctors, have great relationships with the allied health people across the road, but we moved away from filling rooms with allied health
Mm,
because we would fill rooms with doctors and then
mm.
their books with patients.
Yeah. I think that's a great point. You know, you kind of came up with a plan rather than kind of on the fly, you know, fill the room with one allied health. And also, I think another takeaway for our listeners is kind of you had like a backup plan, you know, just in case you couldn't buy the building you were operating in, you had a backup building, you know, you know, controlling your destiny is kind of coming through.
Yeah, I
Yeah.
think my business partner and I, we think very similarly and generally agree, but we've always got a plan B. And her plan B might be different to mine and we'll
Mm,
come together, but it's that innovation of ideas is always ticking over, going, well, what happens if this happens? What happens if this doesn't work? And my husband hates it. He goes, you always think the worst case scenario. Why can't you be positive?
mm,
Whereas I have to say, if the, I don't know, the roof falls off tomorrow, I need to know the patients can still be seen. And if that means we move to the other practice and we don't open the other practice on the weekends, we could trade on the weekends while the other one got fixed. And you've got to be flexible and innovative and have people going, well, what about this? Have you thought about doing it this way? And we have management meetings with all of our doctors. We have doctors meetings, so everyone has a voice. Everyone can say, have you thought about doing it this way? Even down to the 17-year-old male receptionist
mm,
who sit there and go, so on Sunday, I should do this, this, and this because it's often a little bit quieter, or the phones are running hot from
mm,
this time. So we need another person, then the other tasks can get done
mm,
later. And you know, that's a 17-year-old coming up with ideas.
mm. Brilliant. And also, you mentioned that, you know, kind of purchasing one of the properties for the business, kind of a hard lesson in terms of paying double stamp duty because changing the ownership structure. Obviously, not financial accounting advice, but I was just curious, like for that one, was it kind of changing from individual name to a kind of um, unit trust, or like what was the
So
thinking there?
it was purchased in four individual names and then later moved into a property trust.
Okay. Yeah.
But there were added complexities in that the solicitor who assisted us at the time actually died.
Oh.
And we may not have been given the right
Mm,
advice. And there were time pressures with settlement. Similarly, we also bought the property at auction.
yeah.
So therefore, you sign on the day. There's no
Yeah.
coup. You have your deposit.
Yeah. Oh,
Um,
so initially put down individual names.
yeah.
Maybe you hadn't thought through all the things yet, or maybe a bit rushed. So that's why I put individual name rather than.
Also had a different accountant at the
Oh,
time.
okay. Yeah.
And similarly going, okay, so for two couples, unrelated parties
Mm,
can't business property together.
right.
The the accountant sort of, you're always looking at ways to correctly get around things.
Mm,
And at the end of the day, it was repay it, change the entity,
mm,
and protect the business and the
yeah.
company,
Yeah. Yeah.
or keep being a bit dodgy and pay for it later,
Yeah.
pay whatever down the track.
Yeah.
But I think over time I've learned that sometimes mistakes are expensive and you just have to cop it and pay it.
Yeah. Kind of correcting it then so that benefit in the future. Yeah.
For your sanity and your well-being,
Mm,
occasionally you throw large amounts of
mm,
money away
yeah.
with the view to improve in the long
Yeah.
term and reduce your risk in it,
Yeah.
or re-stratify your risk.
That's right.
Because I must say, giving the state government money for nothing was very uncomfortable.
Yeah.
And I'm trying to sort of think of another example that, trying to pay something for a service that wasn't delivered, and we're like,
Mm,
well, you you didn't give us the service. We're not
mm,
going to pay you. And it's like, well, we'll take you to the debt collectors if you
mm,
don't pay us. Sometimes you have to go, just shut up and pay it. It's like the speeding fine. You just sometimes have to admit you did the wrong thing and pay
mm.
it.
Yeah. So finishing up for yourself, is there any kind of particular goals that you're looking to achieve? You know, it could be financial, could be professional, could be personal.
So I had set myself a goal that I would like to be in a position to retire at 55. Um, Given that I'm opening a third practice, that may not happen. But I think my other goal is clear, documented succession planning. I don't want to flog myself and work hard and have nothing. And whether that's at, 55, 65, 75, I think we as doctors, most doctors work hard. You want some legacy and something to show for it. I think if that's my ultimate goal, to be able to walk away and go, I did a good job, I ran a good business, my colleagues and staff felt looked after, and I think that's the ultimate goal. But at the same time, teach the kids the skills to be like, you can do whatever you want. You can go and invent something. You can work overseas. You can drive 5 minutes down the road and still have a happy career.
Mm,
I think we all want to follow our passions and dreams, but I don't want to get burnt out.
mm,
And listening to your body and reflecting on when that pain point starts, and knowing that if once you hit burnout, it takes 3 to 6 months to peel it back and start
mm,
to recover. Pretty much 12 months to the day, I had a Liz Frank fracture on my foot from a high impact
mm,
surf boat accident. And it shocked me how much the injury wasn't wearing the boot and going in the crutches wasn't the problem. It was the added fatigue and I can still go to work as normal. I can still do everything I
mm,
want, when I actually should have stayed at home and rested and recovered and, maybe done some telehealth or something like that, instead of going, I'm fine, I can plow on. Because it actually meant it took me twice as long to get better.
mm. Okay. Yeah. So definitely kind of preparing for retirement, kind of instilling, yeah, kind of teaching and mentoring your kids. And then I think a succession planning, isn't it? So it sounds
Yeah.
like, yeah, very good. Do you have any tips for GPs? Some of this we touched on already. Any tips for GPs, A, to, starting a practice, and B, purchasing property?
I think you you want to work in a practice that suits you. So don't go and move to, the tiny country town where when your parents and siblings are, 5 hours away. You want to still have your social structures around you, but of course you may not want to live and work in the same suburb.
Mm,
I do, and it's hard, but it's manageable. I think saving and having a good deposit, but also, I have an excellent mortgage broker, who I actually trust, who I can pitch an idea to. I can go, right, okay, here's the house. I want to buy this. Find me the money. And he'll come back to me with options and go, no, you need this much deposit or that much. And I think the other big tip there is be prepared. Like, get your pre-approval, be ready to go. Understand that you've got to have copies of your tax returns and all of that stuff. Stay up to date with your accounting,
mm,
because you go,
oh, I'm going to go to this auction next week. And they go, right, well, you need 10% cash deposit. Where is that money? How can you mobilize that money quickly? And similarly, if you're going to pay a 10% deposit, say on a $1 million, $2 million property, have you got the money to pay your BAS next quarter? Have you got the money to pay your indemnity insurance? And so it's forecasting how much does it cost you to live a quarter? Look at your life in BAS quarters.
Hmm.
And but at the same time having a few, don't put it all in one account. I have a business credit card that feeds into my Xero, my personal ABN, so all of that is reconciled in Xero. So you tick a few boxes and off it goes to the accountant, so everything is trackable and there's no discrepancy in what's tax deductible, what's GST required. That was actually a lesson I learned from my GP. He turned up to the GP for appointment. He's like, don't you just have one credit card and one account that it all goes into and a Xero file that you reconcile? And I'm like, no, I have chaos. And I think that's where find the right people that you trust, and look at in your social network who is successful at whatever business and what makes them successful. Are they good savers? Are they good risk takers? Are they just lucky? I think I'm not encouraging you all to go to the casino and make it big, because we all know that's not going to work. But I'm still die by the sword of, you take a big risk, you should get a good return. But if you don't, that's okay too. And practice good defensible medicine. No, I don't want anyone paying money back to Medicare because you've been audited. I don't want anyone, you don't want to encourage people to practice in a fraudulent way. I think ethical medicine and an ethical business is really important.
Mm. And finally, how can people kind of connect with you or find out more about you? And also, I know in some of the notes you provided before, obviously, your practice, obviously you talked about the work culture and, kind of registrars returning, etc. How can people kind of connect or find out more about yourself or your business?
So you can certainly have a look for me on LinkedIn and also on Instagram. And of course, our business social media and website as well. If you're in Sydney, we will be accepting registrars for 26/1 as well. And our practice is very fortunate that we also have a special pathway for Indigenous registrars to be supervised as well, which is a new pilot initiative that we
Mm.
came up to aim to have more registrars have success in their training and attain fellowship. And I think also, if you're at a conference and you see, go and talk to random people. Like, say, yeah, sure, Dan, I'll do a podcast with you, because why not?
Awesome. Thank you, Annalise, for coming onto the show and kind of sharing your wisdom and yeah, I think breaking the taboo, a lot of doctors, I get messages kind of like, oh, I don't want to post this in public, but everyone's kind of trying to learn and how to improve in our business, professional, personal life. So, yeah, thank you for that.
No worries.
And
Thanks.
and thank you to all listeners for tuning in to another episode of Passive Income Doctor. I'll see you on the next one.